Question 4 on lesson number 13. I'll start us off. Jesus said he is the blank of the sheep pen, and that there was only blank way in and only blank way to eternal life.
Use the door,
Remember?
wasn't he?
What's that?
Wasn't he functioning as a door, the
Yep.
gate?
Yep, the door, the gate, and he was the only way in, and the only one, and only one way to eternal life. That was through him. Okay, let's see. Mercy, you want to read 5?
Yeah. Jesus outran all of his disciples to Bethany when he heard Lazarus was sick. True or false?
False, yeah. He waited. Right?
I don't know if it's relates, but
Huh?
nothing. Sorry, I'm talking to myself.
Why or why not? Why did he wait? Remember?
Well, he needed him to die.
Yeah, why?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Dave just has a way with words.
I think he wanted to demonstrate his power.
Yeah, exactly.
Over there.
Yep, he wanted to use that.
You really were.
Through that, he demonstrated that he was sent by the Father, right? That was his words right before. All right, Dave, you want to take 7?
Sure. The rich man trusted in blank rather than trusting in blank. I'm going with trusted in the world rather than trusting in Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, the world,
Himself.
riches, himself. Yeah. All right, Laura, you want to take 8?
The people that were praising Jesus as he entered Jerusalem were accepting him as their savior from Satan's sin and death. False.
Yeah, false. Remember they were singing Hosanna, which means save now. They were wanting him to save them from their Roman oppressors at the time. So what happens next is going to be a surprise to them, so we'll get into that. Lesson number 14.
All right, are we ready? We got a long way to go. A short time to get there. Lesson 14. And you guys don't have to read a lot of verses today, so y'all might as well get ready. We're going to be, so this is kind of, this really covers the last week of Jesus' earthly life. And so we're going to be sort of all over the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, mainly. Some other stuff, but. So we're getting a little bit of sampling from each one of the Gospels, and we're getting kind of a full picture of what went on during the week. So you remember, on Sunday, which is called Palm Sunday now, which we just covered that, Garrett just covered that he rode into Jerusalem on a colt, and the crowds welcomed him with shouts of Hosanna. And then Monday through Wednesday, Jesus and his disciples spent time in Jerusalem, around Jerusalem, Bethany, which is just a few miles outside of Jerusalem, where Jesus had some close friends. And then Thursday night is when Jesus celebrated the Passover. Do y'all remember the yearly Passover that the Jewish people celebrate? That's going to have huge meaning during this whole week. And that's where we are, Thursday, basically Thursday night. And so they celebrate the Passover together. Judas, remember we talked about that last week? Judas, did we talk about that? Judas left. Jesus said, what you got to do quickly. In other words, he knew that Judas was going to betray him. He left. He had some time with the rest of his disciples there, and it was really a close and intimate time. They sang a hymn, they worshiped, and then they headed out. It was things were quiet. The city was quiet. They headed down through the city and out to the Garden of Gethsemane. That's where we're gonna pick it up I'm not sure what part that is. I think part 3, Mark 14:32-36. So that's where we're gonna. Are y'all with me here? Lesson 14, part A. So, Garrett, why don't you kick us off, and then we'll, like I said, be ready. We'll have some verses. We have quite a few verses to read.
They went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he said to them. "Stay here and keep watch." Going a little farther, he fell to the ground and prayed that, if possible, the hour might pass from him. "Abba, Father," he said, "everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will."
So here lies the benefit of where you guys have been, because of understanding who Jesus is. If you just pick this up, it'd still be a good story, if you would, but to realize that this is God become man. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. God taking on human flesh, coming as a baby in the manger. So that's who this is. He is God, but he is also man. And you're gonna get that picture of his godness, but you're also gonna get a picture of he's human also, and his humanity and his divinity. And he says that term Abba, Father, which is if we had to put it into our lingo, maybe Southern lingo, it would be daddy. It would be which is what I still refer to my father as, and that just is a term of why.
Nothing. Laura looked at me.
Okay.
Michael would-
So okay, it was Micah's fault. So it's a term of closeness, and he was asking the Father in this relationship, father and son, that in his humanness, he was asking, "I know what's coming. Is there another way?" And you may be thinking, "Oh yeah, I know what's coming too," but it goes deeper than probably what you're thinking. Is what he's going to have to face. Deeper than humanness, the human aspect of the suffering he's going to have to go through. But he submitted to the Father's will. And Mark 14:43, and then John 18, 4 and 5, 43 and 44.
Just as he was speaking, Judas, one of the 12, appeared. With him was a crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests, the teacher of the law, and the elders. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard."
So you see where we're at. We kind of rushed through this, but they've been at the garden for a while now. It's late. Jesus has been some intense praying. He's asked his disciples to pray. "Look, I need you to pray for me." They had gone to sleep, and they weren't really coming through for him. So then Judas shows up, and the normal greeting in that place. I've talked to y'all my experiences in this before, right? Where they give you a little kiss on the cheek, and so he came in his normal greeting. He gave Jesus a kiss, which was a normal thing. But that was the sign that, hey, this is the guy. In the dark of the night, take him. And then John 18, 4 and 5.
Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "I am he," Jesus said. And Judas the traitor was standing there with them.
Is that 4 and 5?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead. You have 6 and 7, Lori?
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and read that?
When Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they said. That was it.
So this is the interesting thing here is that for the flow, when you're translating things, sometimes you add a word to make the flow better, to make it readable. And really what he said was, "I am." You should know what that means. You've studied, you've been through this. That is a statement of God, Creator God. That is a statement only God can make, "I am." who's that one singer that did I've went off course here, who did the big tour, was it, and it was called I Am? It was like it was a mocking thing about God, either on purpose or not, but it was, anyway, I won't go there. So, but this was the statement of I am, and it was said was coming from God, and it's like, get this, it literally blew them off their feet. Of course, they dusted themselves off and got up and went about their business. And Jesus said, then it was like he's letting them know, this is me, I'm Jesus. But it's so typical of humans, of us. That's just, when I read that, I'm going, how many times have I done that? Of, not that I got blown off my feet, literally, but where you're moving in a direction and it either all of a sudden or gradually becomes clear to you, this is the wrong direction. You shouldn't be going, you just stop. But you don't. You don't. You just tuck your head down and go. Push through. You push through that voice. And you just keep doing it. That is kind of the feeling I get from reading this, is that I can put myself in their shoes and no, this is what we had planned, this is what we're going to do. We're just going to follow through no matter what. And that's what they did. Luke 22:48, did we read that?
Nope. Where'd it go? But Jesus asked him, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?
And then Luke 22:51. So what's going to happen here is Peter, in his zeal, is going to take a swing at one of the guards, and he cuts off his ear. Now, I don't really think he was aiming at his ear. I just don't think maybe his swordsmanship, fisherman's swordsmanship, was really that great. But either he dodged or he missed. And so cut off his ear. And then it's crazy. Jesus heals the guy. He said to Peter, that's not what we're doing now. If it's time for that. In other words, it's like sometimes it's time for that, but it's not time for that now. So he heals the guy. Go ahead.
But Jesus answered no more of this, and he touched the man's ear and healed him.
And then things might be getting uncomfortable for them, but even though they have this huge group. Go ahead, Dan, you have 14, Mark 14, 48, 49. He's going to ask them an uncomfortable question. And that's what he does. Jesus, you see this all through the Bible. God always asks these questions that expose the true thoughts. You'll find God will interact with you this way too.
Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, Rabbi, and kissed him.
Is that 14, 48, 49?
Sorry, 45? Oh, okay, sorry. He skipped a section.
What did I do?
You just skipped a few, but you explained it, so we're fine.
Okay.
Sorry.
My bad.
48, 49. Am I leading a rebellion, said Jesus, that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I was with you teaching in the temple courts, and you did not arrest me. But the scriptures must be fulfilled.
So if they just would have stopped to think of the inconsistency of their actions, what are they doing out here in the dark of the night? And he's been right there in front of everybody out in daylight doing stuff he always did. Why didn't you just take me then? Why are you out here in the dark of the night? Think about it. He's given them a chance, he's given them a chance to think it through if they really want to follow through with the direction that they're headed in. And remember, even in the past, we've looked at their encounters with miraculous things. It still didn't change people's mind, necessarily. Babe, I got to send somebody to check that out. So let's go Mark 14:50, and then John 18:12. Am I messing y'all up here? Okay.
14:50.
Yeah.
Then everyone deserted him and fled.
So the disciples, very good. So the disciples, fearing for their lives, things were getting hot, and this was like 300 armed men here. They're coming to get one unarmed guy.
Just
With a
healed
few-
an ear.
What?
Just healed an ear.
Yeah, with a few raggedy fishermen followers. They're not armed. They're not like, well, Peter, I guess he had a sword, but they're not like decked out. And these guys are decked out. They're armed, and 300. And they're getting one guy, and that's why. In fact, it could have been up to 600 soldiers. The way that it's termed here, it's like they have a crew, and going to battle, and you got one guy. And Jesus just asked him the question, "Why? What's up? Why are you doing this? Why are you coming dark? Why are you coming with so many guys? Why are you guys armed so well? What are you afraid of?" Kind of. That's sort of what he's. Yet still, it's almost like they have this. You can kind of read into this. There's this nagging thing of, I don't know if we're prepared for this. Something there's a power here that they were not used to. But they rushed in, and Jesus did not fight. They bound him, and certainly Satan had not experienced a moment like this before. Do you get that? This has been going on from Genesis 3:15, right? Satan has been after the deliverer to stop him from coming. And when he came, to tempt him, to dissuade him, to get a hold of the whole world and lead it away. Everything, and this is a moment of success for him. They've got him. He's tied up. They've got control of him. Mark 14:53.
Sorry, I was in Luke. They took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests, the elders, and the teachers of the law came together.
So let me just, if you don't know this, temple court, the temple with the Sanhedrin and these guys had courts where they would try people, but this didn't happen in the middle of the night. It was not legal for them to have these courts at the middle of the night, and the whole Sanhedrin shows up, all 71 of them, which is the rulers of Israel. It's like, when do you ever get all 71 of them together? It's like it's not that often, and they all showed up. And it shows they have this plot, and they're out. They want one thing. They want Jesus dead. And then Mark 14:55-61.
The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death. They did not find any. Many testified falsely against him, but their statements did not agree. Then some stood and gave this false testimony against him. We heard him say, "I will destroy this temple made with human hands, and in 3 days will build another not made with hands." Yet even their testimony did not agree. Then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent and gave no answer. Again the high priest asked him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?"
Do you see what they're asking him? They're asking him basically, are you God? Are you claiming to be God? If he's claiming to be God, then according to their law, they're blaspheming, and they can rationalize themselves that they can kill him. They know what he's claiming. You get that? They know what he's claiming. He is claiming to be the Messiah. This is all clear now. They have the Bible. They have the Old Testament. They should know. He fulfills the requirements for being the Messiah, the deliverer. And they knew what he was saying, but they did not have the power to give the death penalty. Only the Romans. Remember, the Romans are the ones that, this is just a province. Judea is a province of Rome. They have a Herod that's Jewish in name, but it's all controlled by Rome. And they cannot give the death penalty. They need Rome to back them up on that. And since all these things were illegal that they've done so far, the Sanhedrin has to meet again after sunrise. So Jesus has been up all night at this point. No sleep, and they're going to give him a beating. Luke 23, verse 1. Where are we at?
21.
Did I miss something
We're
here?
missing
23.
a couple, but I think you're talking about it.
Luke 23:1.
I
Yeah.
have it.
Oh, no, I got it.
Okay, cool.
Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate.
So Pilate is the governor of Judea. He had all the authority of Rome behind him, and they needed him. They needed him to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish, and the temple leaders knew that he could be persuaded, manipulated. They knew what kind of guy he was. They'd interact with him, and they knew that they had some kind of sway over him, like they could just manipulate him. They could threaten him with an uprising, with this or that, And let's go to 23, 2 and 3.
And they began to accuse him, saying, "We have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Messiah, a king." So Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "You have said so," Jesus replied.
So you kind of like Jesus' the way they're doing this, the way Jesus is responding. It's like every good lie, it's got some truth mixed in there, He didn't say nothing for them not to pay taxes. He said the opposite, right? Remember the coin? Where he said, "Hey, whose name's on that? Give to Caesar what's Caesar's. Give to God what's God." That he had dealt with that directly, so that was a lie. But yes, he did claim to be the Messiah. Yes, he is the coming King of Israel. That is true. He claimed that. And then John 18. Let's go 36 to 38. Is that right?
Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders, but now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then," said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify the truth. Everyone on the side of the truth listens to me." "What is truth?" Retorted Pilate. With this he went out again to the Jews gathered there and said, I find no basis for a charge against him.
So, I kind of, Jesus, kind of a sideline of Jesus' answer is that, hey, if this is an earthly kingdom, my guys would fight. In other words, he's saying, it's not always wrong to fight, but you got to use your head. It's got to be for godly, right reasons. If you're going to take up arms, it better be right. And he said, this is not the time for that. I want people to give their hearts to me. And from there, we'll go on. We'll see what happens. But I want people to give their hearts to me. That's where we're at. I'm not giving you, where he was saying, or the bread of life and all that conversation where they just want to be fed, they want to be taken care of. He's saying, no, I am the bread of life. Like, I want you to look to me. And that's what he was really saying to Pilate. And then Pilate's like, is he just cynical or is he ahead of his time? What is truth? He could fit into culture, he could fit into our culture just fine with a statement like that. But Jesus is saying, no, there is truth. And you better know it. You better know what the truth is because it has eternal consequences to it. But you don't really want to know the truth, Pilate. And I'm not going to answer your question. You're cynical. You don't want to know. If you wanted to know, I would tell you. But do you see that the way he handles that situation is like, I'm not continuing to give you information because I see you don't want it. I gave you this much. If you want some more, I'll see it and I'll give you more. But you don't want it, I'm done with you. I'm done. I see you're cynical and you don't want this. And so he didn't. And then we're going to see old Pilate pass the buck, though. He's going to get a little nervous about what's going on. You see how Jesus handles the situation, handles him. Like, wait a minute, who's in control here? Who's in control? The governor, the Roman Empire, or this one guy? And he's like, I don't want any part of this. Let's go to, where we at? Luke 23, 4 through 7.
Then Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, I find no basis for a charge against this man. But they insisted, he stirs up the people all over Judea by his teaching. He started in Galilee and has come all the way here. On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was Galilean. When he learned that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time.
Okay, this is the son of Herod the Great. He does have jurisdiction over Galilee, so he could send him to him. So let's go to 23, 8 and 9. Luke 23, 8 and 9.
When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased, because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he had hoped to see him perform some miracle. He piled him with many questions, but Jesus gave him no answer.
Isn't this something that the highest person ranking in the kingdom, they didn't have social media, they didn't have television, they didn't have, it's like everybody knew, people knew though. The word got out, people knew who Jesus was. They were accountable for it too. Herod was accountable for it, for what he knew. And he was just curious. He had no interest in determining the truth. And Jesus saw that. And so he's showing disrespect for Jesus, God the Son. He just wants to be entertained. Jesus is not going to take part in that, so he doesn't participate in it. 23, 10 through 12. It's Luke 23.
The chief priests and the teachers of the law were standing there, vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him. Dressing him in an elegant robe, they sent him back to Pilate. That day Herod and Pilate became friends. Before this they had been enemies.
More human nature here. That's great they became friends, isn't it? And friendships are good. But friendships can have the wrong focus. And that's one that did have the wrong focus. They had evil, in a sense, in common. And then word spread again. I mean, they had a way of getting word out. The Pharisees probably had been working the crowd. And now they went from a few days before shouting, Hosanna, save us now. They went from that to crucify him. Let's get rid of this guy. He didn't fulfill what we wanted. He didn't do what we wanted. And so at this point, there's already been 5 court sessions. Okay, we didn't really go into detail about all of them. 3 of those were Jewish. It happened in the early morning here. This is early on Friday morning. Then there had been 2 Roman court sessions already. And Pilate was becoming more and more convinced there's something different about this man. And he's backing up. He doesn't want any part of it. Luke 23, which ones did we read there?
13, 16?
Yeah. Let's go down to,
Well, we didn't read that one.
He
What's-
read
13?
12,
Yeah.
so.
yeah,
You want me to read that?
yeah.
Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, and said to them, You brought me this man as one who was inciting the people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence and have found no basis for your charges against him. Neither has Herod. For he sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore I will punish him and then release him.
Man, the Bible is something, isn't it? This historical account. And so this is what we're doing, is we're going through history, a real historical account of this week of Jesus' life. Now, we're not going to try to connect all the dots. We're giving you an account of what happened. But you're going to have to stay, this is challenging for you to stay focused and get through this. But this is important to know, because next week we're going to connect the dots. Now, all this will make a lot more sense. And this will be connected all the way from everything we've covered, all the way through Genesis, from Genesis, all the way through. So that's our goal tonight. We're just going to methodically work through the material. So it's kind of like, this is not the juicy stuff, really. The juicy stuff is more next week, but you got to get through this to be able to appreciate it. So here's what he's going to do. So I love this. Hey, the Roman guys who they could care less. They could care less. Oh, what? You broke the law? Let's kill him. No, he's saying, hey, we have nothing. There's nothing against this guy. You guys have all kind of mixed up stories. One guy says one thing, another guy says another thing. He didn't commit a crime. But to appease the crowds, we don't want to riot. We don't want trouble. And who is this guy anyway? We don't care about him. So they gave him a whipping. And I mean a whipping like you've never seen before. This is like with they call it a cat of nine tails with the whip with all the strands, like say leather strands, and in those strands were like pieces of glass and metal to cut the flesh from the bone. And so we're talking whipping with that thing is like it is a near death experience. And that's what they would do. The Romans were pretty experienced at torture, killing, warfare, all of those things. And Bruce, come here. Quit trying to make friends now. It's too late for that now.
Yeah.
Bruce, around here. Bruce, over
Lay
here.
down.
Come on, lay down. So they're breaking the law by doing this, but it's appeasing the people. Or they're trying to appease the people. But it's still against the law what they're doing because he hadn't done anything. There's no crime. But he said, I'll do this and then I'll release Jesus. And then he said, well, he's going to try a different tactic. No, they won't. They don't want to do that. They said, okay, well, we have a custom during the Passover is we release one Jewish criminal. We release them. And so I suggest to you that we release Jesus. And the crowd did not like that. They didn't respond to that. They had another response. So Luke 23:18 and 20 to 22.
The whole crowd shouted, "Away with this man, release Barabbas to us." Wanting to release Jesus, Pilate appealed to them again, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him, crucify him." For the third time he spoke to them. "Why? What crime has this man committed? I have found him in no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore I will have him punished and then released."
This reminds me of arguing with somebody with a ridiculous viewpoint, like abortion. It's like, you have no argument. Where's your argument? And you just get louder and you get more, they start calling names and start attacking, but they still have not defended what they're saying. And so that's kind of the mindset that I see going on here. They just start screaming louder. They have no reason. They start screaming louder. John 19:1.
Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged.
So he went ahead with the whipping. And the soldiers were not satisfied. This just shows you the level of cruelty. They're not satisfied with the beating. They wanted to make fun of him for claiming to be a Messiah, to claiming to be the king. So this is kind of mockery at its worst. So John 19:2 and 3.
The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in a purple robe and went up to him again and again, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews," and they slapped him in the face.
And then, do you have Isaiah? Mm-hmm. So Isaiah 53:3, but sometimes prophecies in the Bible, we've talked about this before, sometimes prophecies are very clear, like Jesus will be born at this place. And that happened. It's like the Messiah, that was very clear. Sometimes it'll be where you look back on it, people look back on it and say, oh, man, that is so clear now that it's happened, and I look back, I see it clearly. So there's two types, just like evidence in a crime is the way we looked at that before. So we look back and say, oh, that's it, that's describing it. And that's one of these verses that is prophesied, but it's a little different angle of prophecy, but you'll see it in here for sure. Isaiah 53:3.
He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering, familiar with pain, like one from whom people hide their faces. He was despised, and we held him in a low esteem.
So, and you'll see the traditionally the Jewish nation will not too much like these sort of prophecies. They gravitate toward the prophecies of the reigning king, the conqueror. They don't go too much towards these suffering Messiah type of prophecies. Then John 19:4 and 5.
Once more Pilate came out and said to the Jews gathered there, "Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for a charge against him." When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man."
And go ahead and read verse 6 too.
As soon as the chief priests and their officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify, crucify." But Pilate answered, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for a charge against him."
Okay, so he brought him out thinking that it would evoke some pity, that people would have mercy on him because he looked so bad. He'd been beat, and that maybe people would say that was enough, but that wasn't enough. They wanted him dead. And then John 19, and then they couldn't. He knew they couldn't crucify. You go crucify him. It's like, we can't do that. We got to have your approval to do it. That's John 19:7 to 9.
The Jews insisted, "We have a law, and according to the law he must die, because he claimed to be the Son of God." When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid, and he went back inside the palace. "Where do you come from?" he asked Jesus. But Jesus gave him no answer.
So he was feeling kind of nervous, even though he's supposedly Jewish, but he's not really a follower of any of the Jewish religion. He's a politician, and he doesn't have a spiritual interest, but yet, in spite of all that, he knows there's something powerful, something's going on here. There's so much evidence in that historical coverage of the way that that's covered, is that he knows and sees something is real about this guy claiming to be the Son of God. And where are you from? Who are you? Where do you really come from? And so he's afraid. John 19, 9-15. I gave y'all a warning, right? We're just plowing through this. Y'all got to stay. I don't have any good stories today. We're just we're just going through it, getting the info, downloading. Do you like that term? Okay. Have you used that appropriately?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay. He didn't give me full credit. How could I have better said that?
There are ways.
You're so elusive. Okay.
And he went back inside the palace. "Where do you come from?" he asked Jesus. But Jesus gave him no answer. "Do you refuse to speak to me?" Pilate said. "Don't you realize I have the power either to free you or to crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." From then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free, but the Jewish leaders kept shouting, "If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar." When Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judge's seat at a place known as the Stone Pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabbatha. It was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about noon. "Here is your king," Pilate said to the Jews, but they shouted, take him away, crucify him." "Shall I crucify your king?" Pilate asked. "We have no king but Caesar," the chief priests answered.
So what verse did you read through?
15.
So this is the day of preparation, and this is when the Passover lamb was killed, and this is Israel's final rejection of Jesus as their king. This is they're rejecting him, and to the fullest extent they're asking for him to be killed. And then 16-18.
Finally, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified. So the soldiers took charge of Jesus, carrying his own cross. He went out to the place of the skull, which is called Golgotha. There they crucified him, and with him 2 others, one on each side, and Jesus in the middle.
So this is the capital punishment of the Roman capital punishment, but it was reserved for slaves, criminals, the lowest order. And the crucifixion was done in a few different ways. It was put on a tree where they would just be, in a sense, nailed to a tree, or a cross like we're familiar with. And so the nails would go through their wrist, right through the wrist, and then the bones and stuff could hold them, and then through the ankle, like right through, so that the bones of the ankle would actually support them. And the way it worked was that they would hang that, and they would the knees would be bent, and they would start to suffocate. And so just instinctively, to get another breath, they would have to push on their legs, which would cause immense pain in their ankles and in their wrist, and pull up, catch a breath, and go back down. And so it was a very extremely painful way to die. But yet this was the Romans that come up with this, and this is 1,000 years before that this had ever was a way of punishment or killing people. You see this reference in in Psalms that is talking about crucifixion. Psalm 22, 16-17. Before Romans even existed, or before crucifixion existed.
Dogs surround me, a pack of villains encircles me. They pierce my hands and my feet. All my bones are on display. People stare and gloat over me.
So this was brutal. It wasn't just it was the brutality of that, but also the staring. people walking by, looking, mocking. Did we get to Psalm 22, 6-8? I got a bunch of verses here. Dave, what verse do you have there?
I have either, but I've got 22, 6 or 8 now.
Okay.
But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by everyone, despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their head. He trusts in the Lord, they say. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in it.
Okay, that description of Jesus' crucifixion is from the Psalms. Just like those descriptions from Isaiah. It is pretty amazing. And then John 19 to 21.
Pilate had a notice prepared and fastened to the cross. It read, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Many of the Jews read this sign, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and the sign was written in Aramaic, Latin, and Greek. The chief priests of the Jews protested to Pilate, do not write the King of the Jews, but that this man claimed to be the King of the Jews.
And the detail that we have, and that how he refused to change the sign. It's like, no, finally he got something right, the truth. He is the King of the Jews. And then verses 23 to 24 of John 19.
Sorry, we were jumping. I didn't know if I should.
Sorry.
Reply.
I know this is work.
I'm so sorry. John 19.
23, 24.
Okay. When the soldiers crucified Jesus, they took his clothes, dividing them into 4 shares, one for each of them, with the undergarments remaining. This garment was seamless, woven into one piece from top to bottom. Let's not tear it, they said to one another. Let's decide by lot who will get it. This happened that the scripture might be fulfilled, they said. They divided my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment.
So this was recognized. Aaron, how about Psalm 22:18? This was recognized as people that this was already prophesied. That this is the way it's going to happen. I think next time you ought to teach through this lesson, Gary. You'd be better at this one.
Dogs surround me, a pack of villains encircles me. They pierce my hands and my feet.
And then Luke 23:35.
The people stood watching, and the rulers even sneered at him. They said, he saved others, let him save himself, if he is the Christ of God, the chosen one.
Okay. Here again, the mocking is prophesied. We've seen that. Let's look Luke 23:36 to 43.
The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine and vinegar and said, if you are the king of the Jews, save yourself. There was a written notice above him which read, this is the King of the Jews. One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us. But the other criminal rebuked him. Don't you fear God, he said. Since you are under the same sentence, we are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong. Then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus answered him, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise.
Wow. That is an amazing scene. That guy's a criminal. He's lived that's the lifestyle he's lived. And he's acknowledged it. Look, I've done nothing good. I'm a criminal. I'm nothing. Just basically saying, have mercy on me. And he put his trust in Jesus, who's dying right beside him. He knew. He put his trust in the Messiah. And Jesus said, that's good enough. Today I'll see you in paradise. Bam. It was done. And he had no chance to pay tithes. He had no chance to do good deeds. He put his trust in Jesus. And he was in paradise that day. Wow. So he was delivered. He knew Jesus could deliver him from eternal punishment. Luke 23:44.
It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon.
and Mark 15:34.
Oh.
Do you know how to read one of those? That printed, that hard copy version?
Where? Third one. It's like a man going away. He leaves his house and puts his servants in charge. Each.
Sorry.
Come on, brother, give her a little better direction than that.
Yeah. And at 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice. I don't know how to say that. Which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?
And then 1,000 years before, Psalm 22.
My God, why have you forsaken me?
1,000 years before. That's what this was written 1,000 years before.
Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish?
And then Luke 23:46. Reason why he says this.
Jesus called out with a loud voice, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. When he had said this, he breathed his last.
Okay, this is not just suffering. We'll get into this next week of what's going on here, what the meaning, the more significant meaning of this is. But we can be sure these final moments on the cross are significant. John 19:30. Y'all hang in there, all right? We're getting through it.
When he had received the drink, Jesus said, "It is finished." With that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit.
And then Mark 15:38.
The curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom.
Wow. Jesus was dead. It had happened. Jesus was dead. Was there silence in heaven? Was there a staticness? Is that a word? Or uncomfortable laughter from Satan and the demons? They had succeeded after all these years, eons of trying. The deliverer was dead. But why had that curtain been torn? That curtain, you remember that curtain that separated the presence of God from the people? That curtain between the holy place and the most holy place. And why did Jesus shout, Tetelestai, it is finished? Remember that veil. It's like 60 feet high, that in that temple, 60 feet high, 30 feet wide, 4 inches thick. And it tore from the top to the bottom. And this happened at 3 o'clock, the hour they sacrificed the lamb for the Passover. And news must have spread about this event had happened. And in fact, in Acts, you can read over, we won't go there now, in Acts 6:7, it says that many, this is after all this is done, many priests believed. Could it have been those priests that witnessed that and saw that? And said, something phenomenal, meaningful, eternal has happened here. And did they finally believe? It says that they did. There were many of them that did believe. So let's take a look here just a little bit at what Jesus said. Tetelestai, if I'm saying it right, tetelestai is the Greek word. It means it is finished. And that word is used in three significant ways, 3 different ways. One way that word is used is, you can see this, it is finished. That means the job is done. I am done with the job that I came to do. It is finished. And the other way that it's used is when there's a transaction and you have a debt. You pay that debt and it's stamped tetelestai. It is finished, paid in full. That the debt is paid. That's the other way that that word is used. And there was one more. Oh, I remember. There was the job is finished, that the servant would come and say, Tetelestai, the job's done that you gave me to do. Tetelestai, the debt is paid in full. And they would bring the lambs, a lot of the lambs were raised around Bethlehem and stuff, and they would bring, those shepherds would bring a lamb for the Passover to be sacrificed, and that lamb would have to be perfect. And so they would search and search, and they'd find just the right lamb, and they would bring that lamb for the Passover, like for a big feast like this. They would bring the lamb, and the shepherd that brought the lamb in would say, Tetelestai, it is finished. I found the lamb. This is the one. And so it was used in those three different ways. So let's look at a few verses here. Let's look at Luke 23:47.
The centurion, seeing what had happened, praised God and said, "Surely this was a righteous man."
So the centurion, who was he knew the difference between a cry of anguish, a cry of defeat, and a cry of victory. And what he was saying, that was no cry of defeat that I just heard. Tetelestai, there was no fear in it. There was no giving up in it. It was no, I'm done. I did this. It was like victory. I came, I did what I had to do, I'm done. And he died. And the soldier goes, whoa. There's something to that. So, and that's a Roman soldier that saw that. Let's go to John 19, let's see. 19:32 to 37.
Did you want the thing about the curtain in the Old Testament?
Why don't you go ahead and read that? Yeah, I skipped a few verses there in the sake of time, but that's a good one. Read that.
The Lord said to Moses, "Tell your brother Aaron that he is not to come whenever he chooses into the most holy place, behind the curtain, in front of the atonement cover on the ark, or else he will die. For I will appear in the cloud over the atonement cover."
So that cover to separate from the presence of God, it's like there's so much depth and meaning in that curtain was ripped in two. And it's like it happened. It happened at 3 o'clock. It's recorded, historical fact. That happened at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And on that hill outside, Jesus died at 3 o'clock. And he didn't die because they killed him. He died because he was done. He was done. And you'll see, they come around. We won't necessarily go to all these verses. So they came around. So what they didn't want it's messy to have those bodies up there on the Sabbath, you know. So they needed these guys. They're not dying. They're not dying quick enough. They need those guys to die. So they take the bodies down by the Sabbath, and they go by, and the other two guys, they break their legs, and they go to Jesus and go, he's already dead. He's dead. He decided. He died. He's done. So they didn't break any of the legs. So now it's late Friday afternoon, John 19, 38 to 42.
Later, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. Now Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly because he feared the Jewish leaders. With Pilate's permission, he came and took the body away. He was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who earlier had visited Jesus at night. Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds. Taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with the spices and strips of linen. This was in accordance with Jewish burial customs. At the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb, in which one who had never been laid. Because it was the Jewish day of preparation, and since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there.
And then Luke 23, 55 to 56. What?
I think you should read about they didn't break his legs,
Oh,
because that's kind of,
okay.
you know,
Do you have that verse?
yeah.
Okay.
The soldiers therefore came and broke the legs of the first man who had been crucified with Jesus, and then those of the other. But when they came to Jesus and found that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. Instead, one of the soldiers pierced Jesus' side with a spear, bringing a sudden flow of blood and water. The man who saw it has given testimony, and his testimony is true. He knows what he tells the truth, and he testifies so that you may also believe. These things happened so that the scripture would be fulfilled. Not one of his bones will be broken, and as another scripture says, they will look on the one they have pierced.
So all these things have been prophesied, and it's coming about just as it was prophesied. And that was just one of the prophecies with none of his, and there was a reason for that too that we'll get into more next week, that his legs were not broken.
Luke 23?
Yeah.
The women who had come with Jesus from Galilee followed Joseph and saw the tomb and how his body was laid in it. Then they went home and prepared spices and perfumes, but they rested on the Sabbath in obedience to the commandment.
So, though Joseph and Nicodemus, remember Nicodemus, John 3:16, that Nicodemus? It seems that he later believed, because he comes and takes this risk, although he's sneaking around a little bit, but to take Jesus' body and to take care of Jesus' body and make sure that that he has a proper burial. And then they put him in one of those tombs where they have the shelves in there, and then they would, just like we talked about before with Lazarus, and that this is like a 2-ton stone though, that they roll the stone into a little track, and it's like, so it's there, and that's blocking the entrance to the tomb. So the women watched this, and they went home to prepare spices. This is Friday night. Let's go. Now it's Saturday, Matthew 27, 62 to 66.
The next day, one after preparation day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. Sir, they said, we remember that while he was still alive, the deceiver said, after 3 days I will rise again. So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise, his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first. Take a guard, Pilate answered. Go make the tomb as secure as you know how. So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting a guard.
Okay, so they're trying to cover all their bases. They know that Jesus had prophesied that he would rise again, and so they're a little fearful of this, and so soldiers were sent. Like, these are like sort of like serious soldiers, special forces type guys. You know, there's like a group of anywhere between 4 and 16, and they would defend themselves. Each one would take 6 foot of ground, and they would defend themselves. They could hold off a severe attack with the way they would interlock together and defend ground. And so these guys were trained. They were here set to guard the tomb. And then not only that, but there was like these wax seals, you know, that were put if it was broke, anybody would be able to tell that it had been messed with. And then it had the signet ring of the king, of the emperor, whoever the emperor was at the time. That's one way they would guarantee things would not be messed with. So the guard was set in place on Saturday, which is the Sabbath, and on Sunday morning, while it's still dark, that's where we are now, Matthew 28, 2 to 4.
I'm going to read 1 and 2.
Okay.
After the Sabbath at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men.
Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it seems to me like the angel kind of enjoyed that. He's sitting up on the rock, and these guys are falling out. These are the baddest men on the planet, sort of. And it's like just his mirror, the supernaturalness of his appearance, the power of a single angel. And they know it seems like from this description that they probably fainted, but they weren't the only ones afraid. It's like the evil realm must have been in chaos. This couldn't be, because the tomb is empty. There is no body, and this was no grave robber. This was there. It's like all the stuff is just neatly there, laid just empty. There's just no body in it. All the wraps are there, just no body is in it. And Jesus had come back to life. This is impossible, but this is what we're starting to get. Is that we're getting the whole story, and we're getting evidence upon evidence upon evidence that this is what happened. In the meantime, Mark 16, 1 through 4.
When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go to anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other, "Who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb?" But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away.
And then 5 and 7, is that what you have, Aaron?
Yeah. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter, he's going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you."
And then Matthew 28, 8 to 10.
So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy. They ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see him.
And then Luke 24:11. Are y'all getting the picture here? Like as we just read through, is Jesus is beginning to appear to different people with a physical, risen body, and they're beginning to see. And the news, do you see how it's just gonna spread? They're just gonna gradually. First, all of his followers are gonna just see that this is true. He rose from the grave. And then Micah?
Luke 24:11.
Yeah.
But they did not believe the women because their words seemed like nonsense.
And so we have confusion. That would be Micah verse. No, confusion, excitement, skepticism, and Peter runs to. They're like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And they don't know what to think. Peter and John run to the tomb. John outruns Peter to the tomb and waited outside. But Peter, of course, barges right in and to see what's going on. And then John 20:6-7.
And Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight to the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen.
So here again, this is not a plundered grave. The long strips are still wrapped. You see what I'm saying? The strips are still wrapped. The body just came out of it. There was no body in it. And the headcloth was neatly folded and laid there. John saw this and believed. Jesus rose from the grave, just like he said he was going to do. John believed. Peter's head was still spinning. Mary Magdalene must have left earlier and didn't have all the news in return. John 20:11-13.
Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb, and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they've put him."
So here, still, she's in the garden by the tomb. She's distressed and grieving. Verses 14-16 of John 20.
At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?" Thinking it was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned towards him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher, or Rabboni. I'm not sure which.
I'm not either. Lori, verse 17-18.
I like Rabboni.
Okay, we'll go with Rabboni.
Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." How far to 18?
17-18.
Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord," and she told them that he had said these things to her.
You know, I don't know if you've ever done this in this fashion, but we're drawing off of 4 different accounts of this. It's like, this just resonates of truth. Truth just pours out of this. Now, and if you want to do a deeper study, there's been some people that have gone into great detail to prove the resurrection was true. Some have done it without even using the Bible and proven it from historical facts, historical accounts. And what's the name of some of the books that we've done, Garrett, that we've read?
Forensic Faith, Cold Case.
Yeah.
Case for Christ.
Case for Christ.
Case for Christ. There's a few that are really good that are very historical, follow. But what we're doing is just this brief overview, but it's like we're getting it from 4 different accounts, and it just fits together. And it's just, to me, truth it just exudes from the way that it's done here. So while all this is going on, the guards are worried now that they're in trouble. Now, I like the way it covers just the details, too. Who are these guys? The guards they're hunting down the chief priest whose idea to do this, and no way they're going to face Pilate and say, "Hey, we don't know what happened, but the body's gone." No, and they're going to say, don't worry, we'll get you out of this tight spot. Matthew 28, 11-15. Yeah, Matthew 28, 11-15.
While the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. When the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, "You are to say, 'His disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were sleeping.' If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." So the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed, and the story has been widely circulated among the Jews to this very day.
So they got paid money, and plus they got out of a tight spot, damage control by Satan's cohorts. We're almost done. You got to go, Dave?
No.
So Jesus was alive. You look like you're packed up. Maybe you're just excited here to hear the rest of the story. Jesus was alive, truly, physically alive. That's the point we're getting here. For 3 days, his body was in the tomb. His body separated from his spirit. But in supernatural power, Jesus had been resurrected with a new body, transfigured body, if you would, resurrection body. And Jesus had foretold this many times. That this was going to happen. The Pharisees even knew. John 10, 17, 18.
The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father.
So, why did Jesus have to die? Have y'all ever wondered that? Maybe, why did he have to die? Couldn't he just given this message and lived this life and told all people how to live and all that? Well, it was not an ordinary death, for one thing. For mankind, us, death is a consequence of sin, the original sin, and our own sin. But Jesus was sinless, so he did not need to die. And nobody had killed Jesus against his will. They couldn't. And so we'll dig in a little more next week, the significance of his death and the significance of his resurrection. How you need both of those to complete the story. You need both his death and you need his resurrection. And when you understand fully what's going on here, the impact of this is on even your daily life to this day is tremendous. Powerful, huge. And not only your daily life, but your eternal life is significantly impacted by the facts of this story that will, like I said, we'll dig into it next week. But the events that morning were just the beginning. Over the next 40 days, he was around for 40 days, and Jesus appeared to many people. And on that same day, Resurrection Day, and this is one of the verses that we read when we first started this whole thing. Do y'all remember that? On the road to Emmaus. We started off with that. Let's read those verses. We'll wrap up with these verses. Is Luke? Who's next? Who's our next reader? Dan. If you'll take Luke 24, 25 to 27, and Micah, if you'll take Luke 24, 44 to 49.
Can you say it again? I'm sorry.
Luke 24, 25 to 27. This is not on your outline, I don't think.
25 to 27.
Yeah.
He said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Christ have to suffer these things, and then enter his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself.
You see what's going on here, right? This is the day of the resurrection. This is Jesus. He meets these two disciples. They're headed away from Jerusalem. And he takes the time to explain to these two guys who he is. They know him. They're followers of his. But when he explained it and he went back to Moses, which is like we did, he did what we did. He did the firm foundations for him, walking down the road. He connected all the dots for them. The way we're going to do next week is what we're going to do next week. We're going to connect the dots. And they were overwhelmed with what they heard. Micah, will you read 44 to 49?
He said to them, "This is what I told you while I was still with you. Everything must be fulfilled that is written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms." Then he opened their minds so they could understand the scriptures. He told them, "This is what is written. The Messiah will suffer and rise from the dead on the third day. and repentance for the forgiveness of sins will be preached in his name to all the nations, beginning at Jerusalem. You are witnesses of these things. I am going to send you what my Father has promised, but stay in the city until you have been clothed with power from on high.
They were so overwhelmed with this message. And what they did is they could not keep it to themselves. They turned around, they ran back to Jerusalem, and they told the disciples. And there's many accounts of how that took place. But these guys came back and said, look, we saw Jesus on the road. He resurrected. He explained everything to us. We understand. We know what it's all about now. We need to tell everybody. It was so impactful for them personally and so important, life-changing, earth-shaking, that they knew they had to go tell the rest of the world. And that's what they did. That's exactly what they did. So we made it through almost on time, and we'll connect the dots next week. And if you want to bring someone, it would be a good time. We'll make it understandable to people that haven't been through it. It's much better if you've gone through the whole thing, but still, you can in one session. It'll be a little bit long. Probably I'll try to give you an idea of how long, but in one session of connect the dots, basically, of the message of the whole Bible.